today I'm going to be talking about defensive mechanics. Now I'm very careful to use the word mechanics because being defensive in ESO is not a matter of just building raw defensive stats or trading your offense for defense. There are a lot of ways to stay alive and stay very defensive even though you're building straight damage. If you're dying a lot, it's normally not because you're running a glass cannon build, it's just because you don't know how to stay alive and what trade-offs are efficient. There are ways that you can increase your defense exponentially while barely losing any offensive capabilities. So if you're going to run a glass cannon build, for instance, you want to still be playing defensively as much as you can and in ways that are going to keep you alive regardless of the build you're running. So I'm going to go over what some of the raw stats are, and then I'm going to talk about different mechanics that play into your defenses, because it's not just all resistances, but let's start there. So the first stat that is going to be a raw stat is your spell and physical resistance. Now, this is obviously a very important stat, and it's the baseline to all your defenses. It caps out around 33k, which is, I think, roughly 40-45% mitigation, and it is directly countered by penetration. So anyone who's running high pen is going to negate this for an equal amount. So if you're running 5k pen against me, then I have an effective 10,000 spell or physical resist instead of 15,000. Right? So that's pretty simple. How do we get these raw stats? Well, one of the ways is going to be heavy armor. I run at least 2 pieces of heavy armor in almost all of my builds. And the reason why I like running 2-piece heavy is because it gives you the highest possible uptime on Shadow Barrier. Now, Shadow Barrier is a much overlooked passive in the Shadow tree, and you can see here Shadow Barrier. Casting a Shadow ability grants you Major Resolve and Major Ward for 6 seconds, and it is increased by 25% per piece of heavy armor. So if you're running 2 pieces of heavy armor, this goes up to 9 seconds per cast of a Shadow ability. Now keep in mind, Major Resolve and Major Ward is the same buff that DKs get when they cast Volatile Armor. That ability that they have to slot on their bar that keeps them incredibly tanky, we have access to without giving up any bar space, because running these abilities is incredibly easy for us to do. Just think about it. On our bars, usually have 3 to 4 shadow abilities at all times. So on my back bar, I've got Shadowy Disguise and Shadow Image, and on the front bar, you could have Fear and Surprise Attack, which is the main spammable of the Nightblade, is also a shadow ability. So casting any of these gives you 9 seconds of Shadow Barrier uptime, which again is the same proc as Volatile Armor. Now, I keep track of this very carefully so that I always know that I have that up. So you'll notice in the bottom left-hand corner here, I've got that timer that counts down. Every time I cast a shadow ability, that resets, because of course that's how I'm getting these Major Ward and Major Resolve buffs, is by casting a shadow ability. So that's really important. I recommend putting a buff tracker on so that you can make sure that you have Shadow Ward up all the time, and you'll be able to see it in my gameplay. There are other ways to defend. For instance, you could wear Bloodspawn. Bloodspawn is a great set for increasing your physical resistance because it doesn't give you a named buff. It just increases your physical and spell resist by 6,200, so it stacks with everything in the game, and it has a great uptime as well. I tend to prefer Troll King, but I'll go over that later. Another way to mitigate damage is blocking. Blocking is an incredible way to mitigate damage, and it prevents CCs. There are a few unblockable CCs, but for the most part, you want to block a lot of the heavy-hitting CCs that you know are going to knock you back. Sometimes it's better to eat a CC, but for the most part, blocking it can save you from death. Don't block too much unless you have points into block cost reduction, but since you're a Nightblade, you most likely will not, because it's not a very efficient skill. If you're not running Sword and Shield or having a block-oriented build, don't put a lot into block cost reduction. At most one trait or a little bit of CP, but I only block on occasion, and I only block very specific abilities like Meteor, Soul Assault, any of those big hard-hitting ults. I'll try and block Dawnbreaker when I can, but those hit really fast, so a lot of times you can't. The next stat to keep track of is going to be your crit resist. Crit resist is actually really important because having roughly 4k crit resist is going to negate up to 30 or 40% of critical damage. And critical damage is really, really powerful, and you want to negate that when you can. So the least amount I run is this. It's around 1,900, and I get that by running at least 4 pieces of Impen, which I normally run here. So I've got Impen head, Impen gloves, boots, and then pants. And I do this in different orders, different sets, but generally my rule is I have 4 Impen and 3 well fitted, and that's what I prefer to play. Well fitted, of course, gives you cost reduction on sprinting and rolling. So the point is, the least I'll run is around 2,000, and then if I'm wearing Impreg, which I do pretty frequently, I'll have around 4,000. And you can see that that's a very effective form of mitigation. There's also the Psijic Order skill, which I think is actually pretty cool. And if you're running that back bar, when you block, you'll pop a little shield, and you'll have major protection, or I'm sorry, minor protection, which is 8% mitigation of all damage except for Oblivion damage on your back bar. So just having that slotted reduces your damage taken by 8%, and then blocking gives you a small shield. This is great for meteors and soul assault and things like this. When you're blocking on your back bar, you'll get a tiny shield, which helps a little bit. You can't crit shields, so it prevents the meteor from critting you, which is nice. And it just absorbs a small amount of damage, and then having an 8% damage reduction on this bar is pretty valuable. So that's something you can do. The next very important skill for defense, the next mechanic I want to cover is roll dodging. So avoidance in general. Now, there are several ways to avoid and dodge attacks. The first one, of course, is to roll dodge. By default, that's bound to double tap keys, but I hate that. I unbound that right away, and I actually bind roll dodge to my mouse. By default, you'll roll backwards if you're just touching the button, but binding it to your mouse allows you to continue your momentum, and it makes roll dodging a much smoother experience. And so I like that a lot. Now, you can also wear sets like Eternal Hunt, which will put down a mine when you roll dodge, and that can be incredibly valuable. It helps to get a little bit of line of sight via stunning the enemy and keeping them off of you. And since you roll dodge a lot anyways, it's a great way to be defensive without wearing a purely defensive set. The next way to avoid damage is going to be line of sight. Being able to hug walls or trees can be incredibly powerful, and that's why you see so many people doing it in these 1vx videos. If you can't see your enemy, you can't cast single target abilities on them, and that's most of the high damage abilities in the game are single target, so being able to line of sight somebody is really valuable. Sets like Troll King help. You can line of sight using Shade, which is great. You can line of sight using Cloak, which is kind of the whole point of Cloak, is that you disappear, which doesn't allow you to be targeted. You can still be hit with AoEs or procs like Slodes, which currently pull you out of stealth, which is very annoying. But the whole point is to line of sight so that people can't attack you. The next way to avoid damage is with Swift Jewelry, or not just Swift Jewelry, but just being fast in general. If you can outrun your opponents, you're able to line of sight better, and you're able to get away in open field situations. If you move faster, they can't catch you. All skills have a range. Melee players are going to have a hard time attacking you, and you can strafe a tower really effectively without having to worry about being hit by everything. So that's our second mechanic. First we had resistances. Next we have avoidance. Now, the third thing that is going to keep you really tanky in this game is healing. Generally, to stay alive, it's a pretty simple equation of your resistance plus your healing. How much damage are you resisting, and how much are you healing? Then, of course, it scales with how much you're dodging, but we're going to count that out for the equation bit of it. And so there are 3 or 4 major healing options. The first 2 you should have all the time, and that's Vigor and Rally. Vigor and Rally are both HOTS. Rally works for a much longer period of time and gives you a smaller heal, and then it also gives you a burst heal at the end based on how much time has gone by. So you see, as it ticks down here, the tooltip heal gets bigger. So it's 7,000 now. Now it's 8,000. Now we have 14 seconds left, 13. Now it's 9,400. So the less time that's remaining on this, the bigger the heal is. So you can get a big burst heal, and all the while you're gaining a heal over time. Now Vigor, I actually keep up like a buff. I have it up all the time. It lasts only 5 seconds, but if I know I'm going to take damage, you cast it. If you are running away and you think you're going to take damage, just cast it. So while you run, if you get CC'd, if you fall down, you're still healing. And that's going to keep you alive. Like to survive burst combos from Sorks, for instance, you have to have at least 2 HOTS up. You want to have your Vigor and Rally up, and they don't cost that much, so they're totally worth using, even if you make a mistake and you heal and you don't take any damage. I tend to be on the safer side and heal more often. Then, of course, there are sets like Troll King, which are incredibly valuable. Since you have healing all the time via Rally, this procs on cool, like when it's possible. If you are below 50% health, your health recovery is going to go up for 10 seconds by a really significant amount, and that gives you an additional HOT. You can also run lingering health pots, and then there are instances where if you're running in a group, you can take a healing ward or a resto ult from one of your friends. So if you're playing with Magicka characters, you want to communicate with them and make sure that if you're in trouble, you call out for a resto ult or a healing ward, and you can mitigate damage that way. And that's really important if you're playing with a group, to communicate well with people who have those abilities slotted. Finally, the last thing that you do to be defensive in this game is to have solid recovery. If you build just straight stats, you can stay alive and take more damage if you're doing absolutely nothing. You'll stay alive longer if both you and someone like me, who is inherently squishier, do nothing. But I'll stay alive longer than someone who's a pure block tank build because I can recover my stamina, so I don't have an end point. Someone who's just blocking but isn't very experienced and doesn't have a way to recover their resources is going to be so tanky, and then suddenly you'll notice you CC them and they just die immediately. They're so squishy, and you wonder what the heck happened. How did they die? How are they so tanky and then gone? And it's because they ran out of resources and got stam checked, and that's it for them. They can't break free, they can't recover, they can't heal, and without that, they are dead. So you want to build decent recovery. On a Nightblade, that's really easy because we have so many modifiers that increase our healing. So even a very marginal amount of recovery added multiplies really quickly. First of all, we have Nightblade passives that increase our recovery by 15% for health, stamina, and magicka. And so I definitely recommend reading through all of these abilities. Let's see, where is it? Is it in Shadow? Refreshing Shadows. Increase your health, stamina, and magicka recovery by 15%. Then, if you're a Wood Elf, you also have Wood Elf recovery passives, which is this one. Increases your stamina recovery by 21%. If you're a Werewolf, you can slot Werewolf on your back bar, which I often do, and just slotting it will give you another 15% increased stamina recovery. Another really important passive to be aware of is Battle Rush. Increases recovery by 30% for 10 seconds after killing a target. That is a huge amount of recovery. So a lot of times after I kill a target with two-handed, I'll switch to my back bar with Werewolf, and I will recover a huge amount of stamina. Then, of course, if you have continuous attack, you can also increase your recovery after you take a lumber mill, farm, mine, or keep. And that will increase your recovery by another 20%. Then, if you're running a Relentless Focus increases your stamina recovery by 10% by giving you minor endurance. So, just by building a small amount of stamina recovery, you can gain a huge amount of effective recovery, and so it's really efficient to do this. This is why we run recovery instead of cost reduction, because our abilities are generally very cheap, so cost reduction doesn't do much to actually negate the cost of abilities, and we have so many modifiers to recovery that it's much more efficient to run a little bit of recovery, and you get much more for adding a little bit of recovery than you would for a lot of cost reduction. Now, the last thing I am going to do is show you how this works in actual gameplay situations. So I've shown you a little bit already, but I'm going to walk you through a fight and explain to you what I do to stay alive and what I'm thinking about while I'm fighting. So here we go. In this fight, it begins as a 1v2, but I have the resource, so I've got a pretty decent advantage here. One of them is trying to flame reach me, and the other one has a bear, so I'm really careful to watch for and dodge those flame reaches, because I don't want to be caught in between them, knocked back when that bear's going to hit. I put down a cloak, I'm watching my shadow word very carefully. When I'm spamming on offense, I don't really have to worry about it, because my surprise attack is going to keep it up. Another one has jumped in, so I gotta keep eliminating them quickly, dodge that bear proc, those things hit really hard. I'm trying to put him down, but no, here's the bear again. Gotta dodge that, keep my healing up, keep my shadow ward up, and go back in. I think I see an opportunity to take out this warden, and alas, he does go down. And now, there's just this guy, so there's still a couple guards left, and it's just him and me. If he couldn't kill me before, he can't kill me now. So I can just go on offense and keep him shielding until he's dead. These guys come back, but now there's even more of them. So I don't know how many there are, so I'm going to line of sight, use cloak and the environment to get away. I'm much faster than these guys. And so I see 3 of them at first, and now there are 2 bears. But one of the wardens is really low level, so I spot him, and his health is just dropping, so I cloak to finish him off, but the poison injection gets him, so now I can kill this guy. His shields are down, he's being ignorant, so he goes down really easily, and now I can get back to fighting this warden. I'm still trying to dodge his bear, and then 2 more guys come in, so I want to finish him off very quickly, and we can get out of there. Now this guy is pulling me out of cloak, which is really annoying, so I'm going to kill him. Not too hard. Don't put that skill in your bars, guys, it's not worth it. Now I'm getting feared by the guy in the back, and I am getting slowed by this Sork. So I'm trying to push the Nightblade away, but he just is cloaking away, so I'm going to let him go, and in the meantime I can kill this guy. So he's not keeping shields up, he doesn't know what's happening. I hit him with the Assassin Will, and down he goes. Then this guy gets away, so I can call that a day. In this next clip, I am having a 1v1 with this really good player, and I'm chasing him around, and I potato down the tower. So now I gotta heal, waste a bunch of my resources to get back up the tower. Now first thing I have to do when I get back up here is bash the res, but I'm too late, so I try and kill this guy because he just res, so he's low on resources. I get my in-cap off, I'm trying to get my relentless off, but I get CC'd first, so I roll dodge cancel it after, and between that and poison injection, he's gonna go down. And now it's just a 1v1 between me and this other guy, but I have low stamina, so I can't do that much to him right now because I need to be able to defend. So I'm poking at him, trying to get some heavy attacks off. We're both feeling each other out. I'm going to put down a shade to maim him and refresh my shadow barrier. Here's the critical moment. I go for the in-cap and relentless focus. He dodges the focus, but what he doesn't realize is that I still have the 20% damage buff from in-cap, so he is in my execute range, and I'm able to finish him off because he gets too close. And that's how I win. And those are my thoughts on defensive mechanics for Stamina Nightblade. If you have any questions at all, leave a comment, whether it's about Stamina Nightblade or any other class, and I'm happy to help. I want to go ahead and thank you guys again so much for the support last video. I'm really glad that these are helpful to you, and so really, if you have any questions, I am happy to help.